Okay, no, you're good.
Okay. We got, Ernie's going to be a little bit late. He's stuck in traffic. I want to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Secretary, do a roll call. Roll call. Who's our secretary?
I don't think we have one. Do you want like an attendance?
Well, the new directions I got said that we would do more by Robert's rules than we used to. So that Robert's rules calls for roll call.
Okay.
And then we have to decide if we have a quorum, which I think we do without
Yeah.
any trouble. So,
Yeah, we have 14 members, so as long as there's 7, which I agree.
yep, we're okay. All right.
Plus we have one online, so. John Bello is online. He's in here.
Is
Okay.
Tom not online yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Oh, Tom is now here.
Great. And Ernie, we were waiting on.
He's
right?
coming.
I made it.
That was Tom.
Did- Did we get copies of the last minutes?
Yep, they're on the table up there, and I believe we also emailed them.
Anybody have any questions about the minutes from the last meeting? We haven't seen them yet, I don't think, but we'll skip that for now, I guess.
Did you not get a copy of the minutes?
I don't think so.
I don't know if Josh, did you email them, Josh?
We'll double check.
All right, whatever. I have a couple of presentations to be given to us by staff. Whenever they're ready.
We also have copies of minutes.
Can I have one of those?
Anybody else copies of minutes?
This is John Bella. I would ask that y'all speak into the microphones. It is extremely difficult for me to hear what's being said. And I have my volume cranked all the way up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, John, it's just tough. We're not really set up for hybrid meetings. Let me try to move this a little bit closer.
Yep.
You just, everybody, John has mentioned this before, when you go to speak, make sure that microphone is close to you. If you're sitting back in your chair and like 2 or 3 feet away, it gets a little distant, so, thanks.
Okay. I want to start by introducing all the members. There's a lot of new people, and we don't know who they are, and they don't know who we are, so we'll start on that end of the table if we may.
Mike Lightfoot, commercial fisherman.
Will Ransom, a recreational angler. Skip Feller, for hire industry.
Jeff Deem, a recreational fisherman chairman.
Scott McDonald, fish buyer.
Mark Sims, recreational fishing.
Alex Perez, recreational land charter.
Alex Aspinwall, recreational angler.
Mark Sanford, commercial fisherman.
And John and Tom, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves on the phone as well.
John Bella, recreational.
Tom Powers, recreational fisherman.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, before we get started, I'd like to introduce somebody in the audience. Ron Larson, if you'll stand, please, so people can see you. He is the rep for Virginia Power on the turbines. He reps the commercial and recreational fishermen. So if you have any questions, feel free to talk to him after the meeting.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. All right, we're ready.
All right, just before we get started, I did want to introduce our VMRC staff. We've got a lot of new faces up here, so it'd be great for you to get to know ours as well. I am Shanna Madsen. I'm the Deputy Chief of Fisheries here at VMRC. Our Chief of Fisheries actually just stepped out of the room for a second. That's Pat Gear. We do have some new staff that should be some different faces for FMAC. Scott reminded me that we haven't met in person since COVID started. I've gotten to know all of your voices, but it's really been a long time since I've seen your faces. So we've got some new staff here. I'll start with them and they can kind of stand up and say a little something about themselves. So first of all, we've got Dr. Brooke Lohman. She is our stock assessment scientist. I think that I introduced her to you guys over the phone last time, but here she is, face and everything. Brooke, just give them a little quick, just a couple of sentences about where you came from, etc.
Sure. Yeah, so I grew up Southeast Virginia, grew up in Chesapeake, went to William & Mary for undergraduate, went away to grad school up in New England, spent a lot of time doing marine fisheries science up there, and finally made my way back down here after 9 years. And I was always from away, so now I'm glad to be back to where I'm from.
We're glad to have her.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right here in the front row, we've got Mr. Josh McGilly. Josh is your new staff person for FMAC. We always have a staff person coordinating for FMAC. Josh will be the person who will be sending you your emails, your friendly reminders, and things like that. Josh, say a few things about yourself as well.
So nice to meet you all. You've been receiving emails from me. I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm a recreational fisherman from up there. Came down here for my master's at Old Dominion. Graduated there in May. I studied mycobacteriosis in striped bass in the James and Rappahannock River. So like a lot of you guys, I target a long list of recreational species, so I look forward to working with all of you.
Excellent. And I'm just kind of going to go around the room because, again, it's been a long time for some faces. Jill, I know that you don't want to do it, but Jill is our quota monitor. If you call, you usually get Jill, and you will love to get Jill. She's incredibly helpful. So, Jill, just a couple of things about what you do.
This coming February, I'll be here for 8 years. Primarily work on the commercial striped bass program and quota monitoring all our species, and do a lot of permitting and licensing. So if you need anything, just give me a call.
We do that too.
Yes, we call Jill often. Lewis.
You're not.
Oh, I am.
Think back, if I can remember where I came from. I've been here a while. I've been in fisheries management for 20 plus years, and Claude Bain, who was a long-time director of saltwater fishing tournament, retired. I took his place, so I've been working there. And myself and Susanna Music co-direct the volunteer angler tagging program as well. So if you call me, you'll probably get Ann. And like Jill, you'll enjoy talking with Ann.
Jill is our Lewis is our resident encyclopedia. We turn to him for all of the history of VMRC, so he's incredibly helpful.
What I don't know, I just make up.
And he says it with such confidence, we believe him, so it's fine.
He's been around forever, so why not?
Yes.
And back here in the corner, we've got Officer Sterling, please. So we have instituted a new thing with some of our MAC committees, and having an officer come to our meetings so that we can get some law enforcement perspective on some of the topics that we're discussing, and make sure, that sometimes I think we forge ahead with regulations or ideas that might not necessarily jive with what's going on out on the water. So we've been inviting law enforcement to each one of our MAC meetings, and Officer Sterling is our representative.
Brandon Sterling, I'm over from the Eastern Shore, been with the agency since '05, so I'm the captain over there, longtime recreational fisherman, and
We're glad to have you. And then these ladies hiding over here in the corner, you may remember Summers. Yes. Summers was your staff person before we signed Josh on. Summers is moving on to the FMAC committee, so she gets the distinguished honor of helping me there. Summers, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so you've definitely talked to me if you are a charter captain, because I call you guys a lot. You a lot. But yes, I'm originally from Michigan, worked in Florida for a few years, and then came up here in 2019. And I studied sound, mostly sound and fish. So, but yeah, you're used to me.
And last but not least, Alexa, our crab extraordinaire. Alexa, a bit about yourself.
Alexa Galan, like Josh, I'm from New Jersey, and like Brooke, I went to school in New England, but I've been at VMRC for 4 years. I handle some of our offshore species, including black sea bass, summer flounder, scup, Also blue catfish, like Shanna said, blue crabs. So I work a lot with FMAC, and especially this year. If you have a question about any of those species, you're welcome to reach out to me anytime.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for letting me introduce everybody. It's just good to get to know each other's faces again.
Sure is. Ernie just came in. Ernie, we're introducing ourselves and getting a little history on.
I'm Ernest Bagden, I'm a commercial fisherman from Chincoteague. Ernest Bagden, a commercial fisherman from Chincoteague.
Glad to have you, Ernie.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I think we're rolling into new business then, Jeff, if you're comfortable. How would you like to proceed with minutes? It sounds like the minutes did not get sent via email. Do you just want to do both sets of minutes at the next meeting?
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, we'll do it that way.
I apologize if I didn't get them. They were sent to me.
Oh, no. It sounds like we just had a miscommunication and they didn't go out, so not a problem. That's on our end. Okay. So the main event of what we're here to chat about is the recreational cobia permit. We've talked a lot about this through the years. Summers is going to come up and give us a background of the permit, some of the data sources of the permit, etc. We're going to kind of tag team this presentation, so you'll see some faces cycling in and out. Summers is going to cover our historical portion of the permit. I'm going to cover the evaluation portion of the permit. And Josh is going to come up and he is going to speak about what some of the modifications and changes would be to the program. Essentially, we've had this program in place now for about 5 years. After 5 years, really any program warrants some level of evaluation to ensure that the data that are being collected are accurate, are the types of data that can feed into the stock assessment, and the types of data that are useful for good management. So essentially, this presentation is a presentation of our findings of that evaluation, and then some suggestions for modifications for the future.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so like Shanna said, I'm going to do a quick intro. If you, just for new members and those that may have not, I'm sure all of you have dealt with it though, the recreational cobia permit. So this actually came to be in 2015. A group of recreational cobia anglers expressed interest in a self-reporting database of cobia. And the original intent of this permit was to collect more data on the expanding fishery, because it has definitely expanded over the years. So you can see here, oh wait, hold on, I gotta find my cursor, here it is. So it's been since 2016 till now. You can see the season has changed a little bit over time, including the most recent change, which was a cut of 30 days. The types of permits have also changed. So if you remember back in the day, every single person had to have a permit, but now only the captain or operator of the vessel has to have a permit. And then people targeting from a shore, a pier, or any other man-made anything. And then the deadline, so we extended the deadline in 2019 because that coincided with the revocation process. So as you can see in that last column, that's the reporting. So you have to report your activity even if you didn't catch any fish, if you're targeting cobia, or if you didn't actually go fishing at all. So as you can see, throughout the entire program, it has been mandatory by regulation. But the first 2 years, we did not enforce that. The third year, there was no time limit. So you could essentially call us and say, I forgot to report, and then you could just report quickly and then get your permit. And then 2019 started the revocation process. So that's where if you didn't report by the deadline, you could not get the permit the following year. And we've been operating under that since 2019. Okay, so as you can see, this is the history of the number of permits and the reporting rate. So I just want to draw your attention to, since the inception of this in 2016 to 2017, there was a huge jump in the number of people that wanted the permit. That number increased steadily up until 2020, where it maxed out at around 8,000, and then decreased in 2021 And then in 2022, it actually increased by 100, so it was 7,700. As you can see, the reporting rate has increased over time. Definitely when we made it mandatory in 2019 to 2020, you can see that big jump. That's also when staff really doubled down on reporting reminders. So I'm sure you guys have seen the emails that we send. We try to send 2 preseason emails, email every month, and then at the end of the year, we really push out 2 or 3 emails to remind people that haven't reported yet to try to get those reports in. So as Shannon was saying, as this program has been in place for 5 years, we basically need to evaluate it. So we wrote a report to submit for evaluation with some research questions. And basically, we were just wondering if the data from this program could be used for current or future stock assessments, if any of the data could meet any research recommendations or fill any data gaps in previous stock assessments, if we could get any feedback on improvements or modifications that could be made in order to provide better data for stock assessments, and then ask about if there's any concerns with the accuracy of the data or if the same amount of or better data could be provided by voluntary English surveys. So we submitted this information to Dr. Eric Williams, and I will turn it over to Shanna. She can talk about that process.
Thanks, Summers. I'm actually going to slide Tom and John in front of me so maybe they also hear me a little bit better, and then we can scoot them back over when the conversation starts again. Okay, so like Summer said, I'm going to cover the section where we kind of talk about how the program was evaluated. So like Summer's outlined for you, we put together a report that talked about the types of data that are being collected, that talks about how things are reported, the history of the program, and things like that. And the agency reached out to the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission first, as they are the entity who manages the coastwide stock of cobia. They recommended that we try to contact some of the modeling leads for the cobia stock assessment, and the stock assessment actually goes through the Southeast Fisheries Science Center. After some rigmarole to try to find somebody, we were having a hard time there. We did get a hold of Dr. Eric Williams. He is one of the modeling leads for the stock assessment subcommittee for cobia. He's also the chief of the Atlantic Fisheries branch with the Sustainable Fisheries Division of the Southeast Fisheries Science Center. So we are greatly indebted to him for taking the time to review this program for us. He met with us to evaluate the current program and focus on the research questions that Summers had on the screen before, and just really talk through what some of the needs are for the cobia stock assessment to get a better idea of the types of data that we should be collecting to feed into the stock assessment. So just for a little bit of background, let's get that out of the way. Yeah, there we go. So just for a little bit of background, the last cobia stock assessment was completed in 2020, and the stock was found to not be overfished, and overfishing is not occurring. As like a reminder of a little bit of background on what stock assessments are, they're really just a way to integrate our various fishery-related information into a population model. And these models really include information on length, weight, age, landings, discards, and relative abundance. Stock assessments really are the foundation of best management practices for any species. That's the place where we get the information about the status of the stock. Are they overfished? Is overfishing occurring? And so it's incredibly important for us to have good data that feed into these models to give us this important information. Some of the most important data for stock assessments is typically the annual cobia model. Let me go this way. There we go. Get my pointer back. Okay. So starting off with abundance. In the case of the cobia stock assessment model, there is only one abundance index. And unfortunately, the survey that provided that index was terminated in 2015. So one of the things that the stock assessment is going to be looking for is a new abundance index. Now, preferably abundance indices would come from a fishery independent survey. So that means something like NEMAP, for instance, that goes out on the water and is just sort of is collecting fish independent of the fishery. Now, without that, then the next best source for this types of information would be something called a catch per unit effort. And those data come from the fishery itself. However, there are some stipulations with that in that the data needs to be mostly free of any bias that would affect the relationship between that catch per unit effort and the actual population abundance. So in the case of cobia, the collected data from the recreational fishery is insufficient to calculate the CPUE that could be used in an abundance index. This is because the data would need to be mostly free of the three things that you see on the screen: bag limit bias, it would need to represent a consistent measure of effort, and it also need to be free of reporting bias. In reviewing our program, Dr. Williams did conclude that any CPU measure from the data would almost certainly be biased as an index of abundance because obviously we have bag limit bias, we have a bag limit for cobia, and we have an issue where the data suffer from reporting biases because it relies on self-reported, unvalidated data. That type of data can sometimes be accurate and unbiased, but it's really only when the participants in the program are mostly free of negative views of the program itself. So these are some of the things that we'll kind of dig into a little bit more as we move along. So next we'll talk about age composition. This is the second piece of the puzzle for the stock assessment that the assessment scientists are telling us they need. So in the case of cobia, there's only one set of age composition data. And so when age data is limiting, length data can be equally as important to the stock assessment model. And one of the more data deficient areas of length data are data on discards. It is a notoriously difficult and expensive piece to collect from fisheries, as it often requires either full retention studies where we're holding on to fish that are outside of the size or bag limits, or observer programs where we've got folks out on vessels deployed measuring and pulling discarded fish. So it's typically incredibly expensive to do some of these things. However, if we do have anglers that are providing accurate data on the size and the age of the catch, we can infer those discards adequately, especially if we know that the primary reason for discarding is minimum size limits. So it gives us a good idea of what's being discarded and why. Further collecting discarded sizes can help to characterize the population. And these types of data have been found, once again, to be most accurate when the anglers who are participating in the program have positive views of the program and the data that they're collecting. So now we're going to get a little bit into the data accuracy issues. We've talked a lot about the importance of data accuracy when we're collecting things from this program. And we're going to sort of talk about what some of the issues are that we're seeing within the accuracy of the data as the program currently stands. I do want to say that the flaws pointed out here are not meant to be accusatory in any way. I know people in this room participate in the program. It's really just an artifact of this program growing to a size that has quite frankly become unmanageable. As Summers mentioned earlier, the fishery has really expanded and changed greatly over the last 5 years. When the program was first started, we were, seeing maybe 400 anglers or so participating in the program. And like Summers showed you earlier, now we're looking at 8,000 anglers. So some of the issues that we're seeing when we explore the data and some of the issues that Dr. Williams was able to find are things like duplicate reporting for the same trip, duplicate permits or folks reporting without a permit. A lot of times, Summers was mentioning all of the emails that we're sending as reporting reminders. Well, you don't get those reporting reminders when you meet your requirement to report the first time because people don't want to be constantly berated after they've reported. So a lot of times people will meet their reporting requirement. Hey, I went out once this season. I reported it and then not report at all for the rest of the season. There is no report required if cobia is caught as bycatch. We just don't have a handle on what's going on out there. Our reporting rate is high, I will say that, but it's not at 100%, and we'd need to make some adjustments for non-reporters in there, but it's really unclear how many folks are not reporting, how many folks are have a permit and aren't reporting, or how many folks are just out there fishing, quite frankly, without a permit as well. The other thing that we see a lot of is we do send those reporting reminders out, and they create these very big reporting spikes. So on the days where we send a reporting reminder, folks are immediately sending something in saying they caught something that day when they probably haven't. They might have caught something earlier and they're just now remembering. But we see a big spike there, so there's increased landings on and around those days that we're sending those reminders out. Something else that we're seeing that is very discouraging is we do see people who apply for the permit, and then as soon as they apply for the permit, they go online and they fill out a report saying that they didn't fish. Now, we don't know if that means that they're actually not intending to fish for the rest of the season, or if they're really just checking a box so that they can ensure that they will be able to get the permit in the following year. But these are some of the data accuracy issues that we're finding as we've started digging into the data. So these biases that the agency and Dr. Williams have identified do really kind of prevent these data from being used to make inferences about the fishery and the stock itself. And because of these issues, the program and the data really don't do much to actually support the stock assessment in the way that we wished that it would. We know that we want to have good science and good management of the species. We do know that a lot of the data here just really are unusable because of a lot of the inaccuracies we're seeing in those data. Additionally, because of the growth of the program, I will say it takes a very significant amount of time to execute. So we've got 8,000 anglers now that are reporting. Summers and Josh are dealing with creating reminder media posts, creating reminder emails, full web page spreads, decision trees and illustrations to try to help people figure out when to report and how to report. They're getting phone calls about how to report. They're putting in paper reports. And frankly, unfortunately, sometimes they're getting oftentimes profane and rude, ineligible anglers when they find out that they are unable to get their permit for the next season. So that's kind of from a staff perspective about some of the problems that I see and the way that I don't like my staff being treated. From an angler perspective, frankly, it's very burdensome to anglers as well. The mandatory nature of the program really has been cited by many of our phone calls as the reason why they dislike the program so much. And several folks have said it's really discouraging them and they don't want to fish at all. As we've kind of talked about earlier, the more dissatisfied people are with the program that they're participating in, it really degrades the data and it really affects the accuracy of what we're collecting. So we think a lot of the concerns or a lot of the problems that we're seeing are stemming from the mandatory nature of the program. So what we're going to focus on in the next two slides are the issues that we see in the program, and really they can be distilled down to two very simple things. One being program focus. What are we focusing on? What data should we be collecting and how? And program execution. How do we execute the program in a way that gets the data that are necessary for the stock assessment? How do we help inform those best management practices for cobia? So we'll start off with program execution. So we talked about how self-reported data are more accurate when participants have a positive view of the program. And frankly, the mandatory reporting has not been a positive experience for the vast majority of the anglers that we speak with. The penalty for the lack of reporting results in people being ineligible for the next year. But that was done as an attempt to try to increase reporting rates because our reporting rates were very low when it wasn't mandatory. The other issue is that the mandatory aspect of the reporting means that any anglers who are infrequently fishing, such as tourists, they have the same requirements as people that are out there fishing every day. So that really discourages people who are just coming in here and kind of wanting to get involved in a Virginia recreational fishery to take on this additional burden and have to mandatorily report. Mandatory reporting also is resulting in a pool of data which is really large, but is low quality. So we've got a lot of quantity, but a lot of low quality data due to the overall dissatisfaction of the program, and then therefore the deterioration of the data as it becomes more biased. Voluntary reporting, on the other hand, targets anglers who do have a connection with the species and who really are out there and want to increase the quality of the data for management, which I think was the original intent of the program. Voluntary data may be a smaller pool of data overall, but the anglers who are in that program are more invested in the vision of the program and the data that they're submitting. So these data are going to be more accurate, more useful overall, and they can be used in conjunction with the fishery's independent data and stock assessments. So the second part of the puzzle here is program focus. So if the original intent of the permit was to collect more data on this really rapidly expanding fishery, we wanted to help inform the species management. As we've previously discussed, these are the data needs for the assessment. We've got the abundance indices and the age composition. And so to kind of refocus our program, we needed to ask the question, what can we do in making the program focus on filling these critical data gaps and help inform that stock assessment? We already went over that, unfortunately, the abundance indices really can't be generated from a recreational CPUE. However, Dr. Williams did want to stress that the ages that are collected by carcass collection programs and then supplemented with accurate length data are incredibly important to the stock assessment. Secondly, he said that the stock assessment really could benefit from separate size information on those discards. So, with that in mind, all of these issues in mind and all of these new focuses in mind, we've discussed internally how to maybe make some modifications to the program that would help better serve what the overall goals of the program are, which are really to collect good data to inform best management practices for the species. So I think what we're going to roll into now is Josh is going to round out this topic with some of the modifications that we're going to be making, and then we'll have a conversation of how we want to best communicate these changes to anglers who really want to continue to collect data for this important species.
So, like what Shanna said, I'm going to be kind of starting the conversation by talking about the ideas that staff have had here. And then after that, I would really like to hear the committee's thoughts on the possible new program. So like 2 slides before, comparing mandatory versus voluntary, currently it is a mandatory program, but the idea for the new program will be a voluntary recreational cobia program. Key being voluntary, there will be no penalties, no requirement for anybody to enroll. The idea is to get people that want to partake in this program for their own interest to add the data that is needed in the stock assessment. So there's going to be a focus on collecting age and length data for stock assessments. Length will be collected from released fish, so there'll be several pools of data for that. Fish that are under the minimum 40-inch size limit, over limits, a lot of us, including myself, people that target cobia, people that go on charters, they do go out. If they catch their 2 fish, a lot of people don't go home. People will partake in a catch and release fishery, so there is a large pool of data possibly from over bag limit fish, those fish that are going to be caught, brought into the boat, possibly measured and then released. And then there are a group of people that fish for cobia pre and post season, where it is a exclusive catch and release fishery. So that and all of it is a giant pool of possible released length data, and also ages from kept fish. So fish over that 40 inches and multiple fish over 50 inches, the one that is allowed per day. So there is a idea to push and revamp outreach programs for this cobia program, and having people use, learn, and really start to put a lot of data into the Saltwater Journal. People that are already part of the mandatory program may know about the Saltwater Journal. It is one of the 3 main ways that people do report their cobia. It is a separate website from VMRC. It is pretty user-friendly, and you can set up a program very quickly, and you're able to put in any kind of catch data. But cobia, where the idea is to make it the flagship species and encourage it for other species as well. Any recreationally targeted fish that people feel like measuring, they would be able to put this data into the Saltwater Journal. And then also discard lengths are often a data gap in other assessments, not just including cobia. Like Shana said, it is a costly and time-consuming thing to do, and it is usually a data gap in stock assessments. So any kind of length data that can be plugged into the Saltwater Journal could be used for any type of assessment work for any species. And focused outreach to angler groups and members of the Sport Fish Collection Program. So they already have a program right now that's completely voluntary where you're able to donate your carcasses. This past year, there was a little over 400 cobia carcasses used for aging through the lab at VMRC. And also outreach to the Virginia Game Fish Tagging Program. Currently, there are people that are already tagging cobia, and the lengths are collected and sent in, but outreach to these people that may not be tagging cobia, they may just be catching them and not tagging them for whatever reason. That may also be a great group to present this new voluntary program to get more length data. And all of this will be used to supplement the information already collected by these programs. So like I said, there's already the freezer program, and people are already tagging cobia, but presenting this as another possible thing may be able to get it to a new outreach group. And then the idea for it being voluntary, there probably would be a group of people that would want to take part in this. We want everybody that would like to take part in it to be able to. Again, there wouldn't be any mandatory requirement though, but an angler would likely have a direct connection to cobia, whether they're recreationally targeting them, whether they are tournament fishermen or charter captain fishermen. And then they would likely have a desire to increase the quality of data management. I think we all would like the quality of data going into the stock assessment to be as high quality as possible. And it would be a shift to collect a smaller, more focused group of higher quality data that would fill in some gaps and needed things for the stock assessment. So now that I've kind of talked about some of our staff recommendations, I would like to hear what the committee, any of your guys' ideas on how to possibly design this program, how you think it would run, any groups you think it should be pitched to. I would love to go out to any group that would like to know more about this program once it does start moving forward, and I will happily give a presentation. So I'm just going to shift this back on the other side so that Tom and John can hear anything. I would like to open up the floor to you guys. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Committee members, anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
At one time, we had a freezer at the fishing center, and I think it was back when they were doing a big stock assessment on flounder, and I think that was the main thing they were looking for. But you could also put cobia, and they had a whole list of fish that you could put in the freezer. Is that ever going to be an option where you'll put freezers at marinas again to collect?
So there are freezers spread throughout the state. Are you talking about the one at the Rudy? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, I was just looking at Lewis, we're going to flip to who was going to come up here. We do have some out there. We'd like to have more. Some places have turned us down in the past, whatever reason, we've had issues with them. We're always looking to expand that program because, we put one out there, it gets vandalized or it gets filled up with, crab chum or something like that. But yeah, I think that's something we're always looking at trying to do, getting more freezers out there. And
Yeah, I think the Tide maybe got the one we had a while back. So I'm sure we can find a different place to put it where it, for people that do want to use it, because I do think some people actually used it.
yeah, and I think it depends on the location, and I'll get with Ethan and ask him about it. But like I said, some of the places they work great. Some of them are just people are storing their own things in there. I mean, we all know the stories behind that, but and it's kind of dwindled over time. A couple of places have just got mad at somebody got mad at us after we had to do striped bass regulations and said, I don't want this out of here. I don't want it here anymore, or I don't want you using my electricity. But I mean, we can definitely look into more of those freezers.
Tom Powers is online and has increased.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Tom.
I have a general comment to make, and that is why we did this originally. I can't find the minutes. We didn't do this for stock assessment reasons. We did this because of MRIP, because everybody was basically in agreement that they were overstating our harvest. And so we wanted something to beat that with, and that's why we did the program. It's good that we're doing stuff with the stock assessment, with the data, for looking into it, but that's not the reason we did it. It was because MRIP was not working on a species like this, which is harvested by a limited number of people and expanded out by the number of fishermen that are fishing in the summertime.
Okay, I mean, Tom, I would agree with you that, that was the reason why we did this, is because we didn't, there was a mistrust of the MREP numbers. But I will say, everything we do is for I'd say almost everything we do, the purpose is to be able to use that information in a stock assessment, because that is what, to assess the population, everything we're trying to do. So if the data is not, as Dr. Williams said, it's not going to be used in a stock assessment the way it is now, we need to look at a way to revamp it.
I'm not debating that there could be better ways to get data that could be used in the stock assessment. But my statement is, if this can't be used to deny or to prove to the people that are doing the MRIP program that they're overestimating the harvest, then recreational fishermen, I don't know why we have it. But that was the reason we did it.
You talking about MREP or our COBIA program?
We did the COBIA permit program because of MRIP. Because
right.
MRIP was over, because the feeling was that they were over estimating our harvest.
Right.
And this was a way to beat it, and we were told after the first year or two, once it went mandatory, that it could be used. And that's my question, is it being used?
No.
So Tom, no, it's not going to be used. So yeah,
So eliminate the program, make it anything you want, because that's the only reason I see it doing recreational fishermen any good.
Great. Then we're in agreement. Yes, this program cannot supplant MRIP. So we've also spoke with Dr. Williams about that. We've spoken with ASMFC about that. This is not a statistically sound program which is able to produce the same types of data that MRIP is. So whether we like the MRIP data or not, it is statistically the only thing that we are able to use to estimate how much fishing is going on out there. So yes, I hear you. We're in agreement then.
I will believe MRIP when I believe the number of recreational fishermen they estimate, which the last time I checked was 2 or 3 times what we have.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions from the committee? Yes.
I just had a quick question. So this is like a hybrid between the carcass collection program, and we're still considering moving forward with the recreational COBIA reporting as far as like generating links and that sort of thing, or are we just, because you said you still wanted to collect released discards below 40 and above 50, and that would be recreationally reported discard, or is that something you're asking at the carcass collection program, like a?
No, so what this program pretty much would be is a combination of what you just mentioned. So length can only be, length can be collected from a carcass or a release, but only age can be collected really from a carcass. So we are going to have the carcass collection program continue for the age data, and then the new program, the pretty much any release information would just be length. So it would be a combination of discard and the age.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question is, I think when this data was presented to the stock assessment, I think at the last minute they completely discarded lengths that were below the minimum size limit. So, but now they're asking, now Dr. Williams is saying that's okay, so that's something that would be provided, that would be used?
Yes, so he did say that any kind of discard information would be helpful to the stock assessment.
Okay.
Alex, I can address that a little bit more if you want.
I just remember it was thrown out the last minute, and I was like, well.
It's about the selectivity. So the way that the assessment was structured last time, and I'm sorry, this is going to be a little technical, but the way that the assessment was structured last time was there's only a single fleet. And so what Dr. Williams said is he really hopes to be able to separate that out into different fleets and have selectivities for each of those fleets, with discards having their own fleet. So this is a future wish if we can continue to get data that would be useful for that.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. That's why they tossed it last time.
Okay, well, it sounds great.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. I was here when we did this in 2015 and 2016, and I recall, much like Tom already mentioned, that there was a bunch of items, or about 4 different items that we discussed back in November of 16, but one of them for the permitting was to create a permit so that we have some kind of a parity reporting with the commercial and the charter operators for recreational, in an effort to judge the level of effort of cobia anglers, because at the time the stated number of recreational only cobia anglers, that's non-charter recreational guys, and we didn't know, and the numbers were quite high, and this was one of those attempts, and so I don't think it met that. It's not providing that relevant data for the fisheries management, and so it kind of fails in that respect. But also to bring up one point is that of all the permits we've had in the past, the striped bass, the striped bass trophy permit, the tilefish permitting when we did it, and the black sea bass, we never had a sanction if you didn't report on those. Mm-hmm. And so I think if this program was to continue, which I'm not really in favor of, unless it's under a voluntary provision, is that we have a permitting program that has a sanction where none of our other permitting do, and that could present a potential problem. So I'd like to see some of the things, if we decide to continue it in a voluntary, is to remove the sanction and move forward with that. I think the idea of reaching out to those committed to cobia fishing, that is charter captains who report, the commercial fishermen who report, the recreational anglers who tag, they're been trained how to measure and tag fish, and you get data both in below minimum size and over the recreational size. You get valuable tagging data from that. The APES, the MRIP program that has become now, that gives you expert observation, and that, as scientists, that's what you're really looking for, is expert observations and measurements. And the collections program, the tagging program, charter captains, and of course the commercial watermen, anglers who report, that you get that data source. And so that's a benefit. And recreationals who are committed, as Shauna mentioned, I think that's another potential value. But the feedback I've gotten from anglers, and granted, it's the ones who either forgot or didn't, the voluntary idea is probably the way to go if we go that way. The mandatory reporting with a sanction, I think, is something that we probably ought to dispose of.
Yeah, so the push would definitely be towards a voluntary program. There would be no penalty to join, no penalty to exit, and whatever. And it would be open to anyone and everyone, but there would be targeted groups.
But
that-
there's also, if I may, Jeff, the opportunity that if someone declares themselves, hey, I want to participate in this, that gives you contact information from someone who's declared their interest, which was part of the intent with the permit, years ago, to declare their intent to say, hey, we can now reach back to you, and that's something they could do, hopefully, on a much smaller and more accurate scale than 8,700 mouse clickers who, because I'm guessing that 1,000 difference is the mouse clickers who saw the going to the Ocean View Fishing Pier in February, and I want that black sea bass, and they see cobia, and, in February I want to catch a cobia at the Ocean View Pier, and when we had tile fish, I want to catch a tile fish at the Ocean View Pier, and you're just clicking and creating, people that you now have to follow up on, and that burns the staff with a lot of follow-up.
Yeah, so this would be targeted to a specific group, pretty much, like you had mentioned. Instead of it being mandatory for everyone, it would be on the person's own
Perhaps
desire.
break it away from the permitting, the sea bass, kind of break it apart. And then the outreach part, I think, is a great idea. Anglers clubs, boat shows, seminars. I think that's really important to gauge interest, get interest in people participating in that, because I know there's a lot of cobia anglers out there who want to report, who want to do this, and that's the folks that you want to reach. So.
Yeah, and presenting this new program to any interested group would, I think, only better the program in the end.
I agree.
All right, while we're on the subject of outreach, do you have a letter that you're going to send out to every recreational cobia fisherman to explain what we're looking for and why?
Once we do decide what the final outlook of this program is going to be, we would start outreaching to any interested groups, whether it be a mass email. I'm not sure if that would be the best way, but I guess we would we'd figure out how to do that.
I think
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go out to, so essentially the group that we've sort of generated through the mandatory program isn't the same target, I think, that we would want for the new program. We, like Josh would say, is saying, we'd want to go out to some of our angler groups and target folks through there and try to get them specifically interested, because it's not going to be a permitting program anymore. There's no permit associated with it. Anybody can report really at any time. And so I think that what the program suffers from now is a lot of negativity. So I wouldn't want to spam the same people that we've been spamming with reporting reminders for the past 3 years. I'd want to kind of wipe the slate clean and start reaching out face-to-face to some of these angling communities and get them more involved and interested in what this new program looks like, instead of muddying the waters with what it previously was.
I think when we talk to these people, we need to explain the good parts of getting this information, getting accurate information. I know a lot of people think they should fake the numbers as larger or smaller or whatever, but we explain exactly what they need to do and get them on board and to have them take some pride in this.
Yeah.
I think that'll help us.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect. One of the things that Dr. Williams, recommended was even just teaching people, again, like how important it is to take accurate length measurements instead of rounding up. So when you see a lot of zeros and a lot of fives in your data, that means that people probably are just kind of approximating. So we need folks to get on board with really making sure those length measurements are on point, and there's not really those rounding errors mixed in as well. But I think those face-to-face interactions, that working with some of our angling groups, will really help us get there.
Could the committee members see an early draft of the presentation?
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We had another question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
For the charter boat mandatory reporting, what data do you get on cobia out of that, and do you use it?
Yeah, so we do. Charter captains have to mandatorily report for cobia like anybody else does. It suffers from the same problems right now. So we want to target charter captains that want to participate in the program voluntarily versus mandatorily. but we can use those data. They would be incredibly useful because charter captains are oftentimes going out, making sure the lengths are correct, et cetera, et cetera. But we would, again, like I kind of said to Jeff, we'd want to sort of wipe the slate clean a little bit and start over with a program that people are positive about versus feeling burdened and negative about.
Do you think you'll get, I know you hope you would, but do you think you would get enough reporting to come up with some kind of a stock assessment?
So the stock assessment it would already take place with or without our reporting. We're just trying to help supplement the stock assessment with good data.
Skip.
I was just gonna echo what Will said with the angling clubs, like the Virginia Beach, Portsmouth, Great Bridge, and they're always looking for speakers. So,
Great. Those
yeah.
are that's the kind of stuff we're looking for
And
from you guys.
that's
Please.
the clientele that, would do this and give you the carcasses and everything.
Perfect. I love that.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. So we'll keep you all posted as things develop. We'll definitely be reaching out to some of you guys with your recommendations about angling groups, clubs that we can target, things like that. I know you two have good ideas for us, so expect phone calls from me. There's nothing to vote on. Yeah. Okay. Do we want to?
It's open, right? It should be done.
There we go. Let's do that. Hold, please. Is that gonna go away though?
Yeah, you just have to put your cursor over it.
Yeah.
And then pull it away.
I just can't get my cursor over there right now.
It's all the way to the left. Just there it is.
There it is.
And then, yeah, you can just, just make sure it feels seen and then.
It's feeling better now. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Technology is the best.
So I'm going to stay up here for a little bit longer. So along with cobia, I do also work with a few other species, including speckled trout, and I do also manage the coastal sharks now. So I'm going to be presenting, giving updates about the speckled trout, and then shortfin mako. Lex is going to be talking about the black sea bass, and then Jill's going to be talking about the spiny dogfish. So with the speckled trout, I'm going to be talking mainly about the 2021 incidental speckled trout commercial fishery. So what this was instituted for the 2021 season due to concerns of speckled trout waste in commercial sectors after the directed fishery quota is met. So in the regulations, the specific section I'm going to be talking about is 4 VAC 20-280-50, titled Directed Commercial Landings Quota and Daily Incidental Catch Limit. So there's two parts to this section. First is for each fishing year, the directed commercial fish landings quota for the speckled trout shall be limited to 51,104 pounds. Then the second part is when the commission announces that the directed commercial landings quota has been reached, it shall be unlawful for any commercial fisherman, registration licensee to take, harvest, land, or possesses more than the daily incidental catch limit for the remainder of the fishing year. The daily incidental catch limit shall be 50 pounds of speckled trout per licensee aboard the vessel, not to exceed 100 pounds per vessel. Pretty much what this means is once that directed quota of 51,104 pounds is met, it turns into this incidental catch with the individual limit being 50 pounds, or with multiple licensees on the boat, it could be up to 100 pounds, whichever is more restrictive. So the directed commercial fishery closed at 6 p.m. on October 17, 2021. The commercial fishery for speckled sea trout goes from September 1st of any given year to the following August 31st. So the season I'm going to be talking about is the 2021-2022 season. There was 19,982 pounds of speckled trout landed between October 18th, 2021 and August 31st, 2022. So during that incidental catch, and then for the entire season, 71,086 total pounds were caught for the 2021-2022 season. And most commercial licensees reported under 50 pounds of trout per day for that incidental catch period. So what this graph here is showing is the breakdown for the entire incidental catch period by year. So you can see that anchored gillnet is the predominant method for landings. It landed almost 15,000 pounds. Hook and line and pound net were rather low, with both landings under about 1,000 pounds total for the entire season. Haul sand had around 2,200 pounds, and then staked gillnet had around 2,000. And then this graph here, what it's showing is the entire 21-22 speckled trout commercial season. So includes the directed and incidental catch. That red line is depicting October 18th, so the end of the directed fishery into the incidental fishery. That black horizontal line is showing 100 pounds total catch. You can see the beginning of September, it does start out slow, but mid-September into the beginning and then mid-October. Catches are highest. Once it hits that red line where the directed fishery is now closed, you can see that the landings start lowering. The first day, the incidental catch landed, I think, 698 pounds to be exact for the entire day. As it gets into December, landings overall start lowering. And then from January to August, there was almost no days with total landings of over 100 pounds. So VMRC is going to continue to monitor the incidental catch program. For the 2022 season, the directed fishery for speckled trout closed this past Sunday on October 6th, so we are now in the incidental catch. North Carolina stock assessment has been completed and peer reviewed, so other updates for speckled trout. The peer review report is still in progress, but it is expected soon, and we will update the committee on the outcome when the results are made public. So at this time, if anybody has any questions about speckled trout, I'd be happy to take them.
Just a moment. Tom, I believe this was something that you had brought up. Would you like to go first?
Yes, I did. I was somebody who brought this up. I was concerned. I still am a little bit concerned, but I'm happy that it was only a 50% overage or 30% overage over the quota, as what it ended up being. If you go back to your distribution function, your test by day.
Why is it not? Okay, you have to move the cursor back over? No, don't put it up there.
Push it again. Put it back down.
Come on.
Now
Okay,
go to the left.
now go all the way to the right with your cursor. Keep going. Okay,
Oh.
now it's over there. Now you can click the arrows at the bottom. There you
There,
go.
this one, Tom?
Yeah, it's just, I would be interested in staff doing, because you can't, I bet you I'm not allowed to see the data. Looking at that and seeing if it's somebody consistently, how consistently it is, and even if you can find it by operation, that we have people doing 500 pounds a day and such, during the period up until like December 1st. After it drops down, if it were like it is from January 1st or the 1st of December on, I would think that's a great program. I'm concerned by all the lines that are up there in the real high numbers, when it's supposed to be strictly incidental.
So this graph is showing.
50 pounds at $3 a pound, 50 pounds at $3 a pound is a good portion of making a day.
So what each bar here is total landings for all commercial fishermen. So it could be multiple, a dozen, 2 dozen, 100 commercial fishermen going out and increasing those catches after the incidental over 500 pounds.
Yes, I understand that, but if it's the same people going out day after day after day getting their 50 pounds, then it's not incidental. They are targeting the fish because they're making, assuming they make $3 a pound on it, they're making $150 a day towards their total catch of fish for that day. For some people, especially part-time fishers, commercial fishermen, 150 pounds is not a bad day. $150 is not a bad day.
Yeah, so just with this program not existing, all of those that possibly were caught while targeting other species would be completely dead discards. So they would have really no value and just put back.
Unless they were targeted as part of the deal. And I don't know if they would be dead if they were caught in a haul seine, because what you're not showing there is that incidental catch by time, for whether it was gillnets or haul seines. I absolutely believe that everything from January or December 1st on was gillnets, especially once it got into the spring. But I question that in the fall.
Okay, Tom, we'll look into your concerns and they'll have something for us next week.
I was seriously worried that they were going to do like they did the year before, where they went from 12,000 pounds a day before they went to incidental catch, or bycatch then, where it was a more pounds per commercial fisherman, to $10,000 a day, pounds a day, and close the fishery in another 10 to 15 days. At least now, they're not doing that big on a per day basis.
Thank you, Tom. We have some other,
I was gonna say, it looks like the program worked because the graph you showed, the majority of the fish were caught by anchor gillnet, and nobody's gonna target 50 pounds, and the majority of the catches weren't right at 50. You said they were under 50, which tells me they're not targeting it. So it's what it's designed for. It seems like it's working.
Yeah.
And after that first initial run of fish, Tom, the price usually drops to about $2 a pound. And even for a part-time guy in today's day and age at $3, they're not going to go for $150. It's really with fuel and everything else. So I don't see that as being a concern. But to me, it looks like this program's working. So I think we did a good job. So.
Just to add on this graph, I think October 17th, there was around almost 2,000 pounds landed, and then it dropped below 700 the next day once the incidental catch did.
Because I think the thing we really need to look at here is hopefully when the stock assessment comes back from North Carolina, that we can look at upping this commercial quota, because this is 2 years in a row now that, it's a 6-week fishery. And that tells you there's a lot of these fish out there. So I think that's something that hopefully this committee can look at, later down the road and helping these commercial guys with that aspect of it.
Yeah, once the everything is made public, we will let the committee know what it does show.
any other committee?
I have a comment about there's a lot of fish out there. There's a lot of fish out there because the recreational fishery is not fishing for maximum sustainable yield. The recreational fishery is fishing for maximum abundance. And they did that by going to a low bag limit with a 24-inch, one fish over 24 inches. We went from, I think, 14 fish to now 4 fish years ago, and that's why we have a good stock, is because the recreational fishery, which is the majority of the fishery, has voluntarily pushed to lower their catch so that we have a better stock for recreational fishing, which is going out and expecting with a expectation of catching fish rather than a hope of maybe sometimes catching a fish. Lots of abundance is important. Lots of abundance of quality fish is important to recreational fishery. Lots of harvest is important to commercial fisheries.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, sir.
I was just curious if there was any data on how much the speckled trout that we lose as the weather's changing, because we got such a short period, and then you go down to the 50 pounds a day quota, and but as soon as this water temperatures change and this weather, then we start seeing a lot of speckled trout dying. And I don't know if there's any data on what that quantity is, and should we maybe look at the quota?
Yeah, we don't have a lot of data on that. I mean, there was some reported freeze stun mortality last year because we had a couple of cold spells. I just talked to a gentleman today that was saying, "Oh, we've heard 50,000 fish," which sounds rather high. But, you know, in some of the smaller creeks, yeah, that we probably did see some mortality. Being able to get it reported and getting it reported accurately is an issue as well. But, I mean, we reached out last year and said if anybody's seeing freeze mortality, you know, to seeing these fish, you know, sun freeze or whatever we call them, you know, report it to us, but give us an accurate number. Don't just take a picture of it and send it to us. We can't do anything with that. You know, if you're that concerned, take the time to count them. You know, and it's like, and if there's too many of them, call us up and we'll try to get out there and help you count. We had some mortality last year, but not what we had. I think it was 2018 was the last real bad one? Yeah. So, but that's going to happen every year. Like, I think last year we had a cold spell just really quickly, and it was like 7 to 10 days would stay that way. So, but getting better estimates, that would be good. And, you know, part of the goal would be protecting those animals that survive that, because they probably have a different genetic makeup that they'll, you know, if they survive that, they're probably, we want those to survive to breed because they'll be more adaptable to the cold stuff. So, okay.
Okay, Ernie?
I'll say a little something on the speckled trout business. I've been fishing for over 50 years. I'll say the first 20 years I fished, there's no way I caught 50 pounds of speckled trout in 20 years. Not in one day, in 20 years. They weren't available. And if you would go back and could look at recreational landings 50 years ago, there was none of those either. There are warmer water species, I guess with the water temperatures increasing, either the stock has greatly increased or they moved further north. We never saw them. So when this was done at first, I was on the Finfish committee then, I was chairing it when we made the 51,000 pounds. It was no big deal because the fish weren't there. And it was done, you know, more or less as generosity from the commercial side because there was no real need for it. There's still no need for it. It's an arbitrary number that was taken from an average of 3 years catch and then added some onto it just in case. Being the stock had greatly increased, the 50 pounds, nobody's going to target for 50 pounds, period. And like Scott said, those fish would have been discarded dead out of anchor gill nets. They do not handle well. And far as, you know, Tom always harps on, they bit the bullet because they wanted a world-class fishery. You know, everybody wants a world-class fishery, whether you're commercial or recreational. It don't always happen that way. So I think this program has really helped because I hate waste. And that would have been 19,000 pounds of fish on the bottom for the crab to eat. And there's not enough crab left to eat them, so.
Ernie, do you think that the low count of speckled trout is because you fish mostly on the eastern shore? We don't have as many speckled trout on the eastern shores. We don't have as many speckled trout on the eastern shore as they do in the bay.
No, they haven't, but you know, we never had them on the eastern shore, now there's plenty. I don't fool with them, but when I'm fishing inside, when I'm using spot nets, a lot of times they're too small. They're 13.5 inches, so you have to throw them back, but I'm drifting and they're alive, and I don't mind that so bad. But when you're anchored up, majority of the times, if they are alive, they're still not gonna make it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Yeah, from the Virginia Watermen's Association, it's made the 50-pound bycatch has made a big difference. And then just a little tidbit info. Number of watermen have pulled gill nets up in the lower Rappahannock where we're targeting rockfish, but it's primarily speckled trout. And and the lower Potomac is the same as well. There are so many speckled trout in those two areas now.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, so if we're all done discussing the speckled trout, I'm going to move on to the shortfin mako retention prohibition. So Atlantic shortfin mako sharks are managed by the International Commission for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. The acronym is ICAT. And then NOAA Fisheries regulates federal waters along our Atlantic coast from 3 to 200 miles offshore. According to the 2017 stock assessment, Atlantic shortfin makos were overfished and subject to overfishing. In response to these findings of the stock assessment, Amendment 11 was put into place in 2019, and it had implications for the recreational and commercial fisheries. For the recreational fisheries, there was an increase in minimum size limit for both male and female sharks. Originally, it was 54 inches fork length for either. That was increased to 71 inches fork length for male, and then 83 inches fork length for females. And then for the commercial fishery, possession of Atlantic mako is limited to those fishermen issued a directed or incidental shark limited access permit using pelagic longline or gillnet gear on a vessel equipped with functional electronic monitoring system. So you did have to meet all these requirements to be able to commercially harvest a shortfin mako. But on top of that, only those shortfin mako sharks that are dead at haulback may be retained. So anything that was brought back to the boat, regardless if you met all those criteria, if it was alive, it did have to be released. So more recently, on July 5th of this year, NOAA Fisheries published a final rule that no Atlantic shortfin mako sharks may be landed or retained in any U.S. Atlantic highly migratory species fishery until further notice, and all HMS permit holders were notified of this. Virginia anglers fish for shortfin mako almost exclusively within federal waters, so retention limits in state waters should mirror those that have been put into place in federal waters by NOAA. The closure of shortfin mako in state waters will help law enforcement during port checks. For law enforcement, most of the shortfin mako that are checked are back at port. They're not seen out on open water checks. And this will discourage claims of catching a shortfin mako within state waters while the federal waters are closed. So this closure of state water will help with law enforcement back at the docks. Then next week on October 25th, proposal to amend Chapter 4 VAC 20-490-10 pertaining to sharks to establish a prohibition on the retention of shortfin mako sharks within Virginia state waters is going to go in front of the commission for vote. So at this time, if anybody has any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer them.
Committee members, any questions?
Mine's a little different. Maybe Louis can help me. Is it that easy to tell the difference between a boy and a girl? I mean,
Would you like to? I mean, I can.
I know Louis is a shark guy, but
I've got slides. Yes.
Can you spot it real quick? Are they prettier?
Yes, it's real easy. I mean, they've got the males have the claspers.
We have this question before.
Yes, we did it.
You have to get, it's real obvious, but that was a point the commission raised too, and I had that slide in my back pocket and showed it. It's easy to tell, but you've got a mean, nasty shark next to the boat. You probably
trying to look
don't
under
want
his
to, it's not where you want them, but yeah, it is. It's one of the few that it's real easy to tell.
I do mako fish a little bit back in New Jersey, and it is actually pretty easy. Yeah.
Okay, from the committee members, do any committee members have any objection to the closure in state waters? It's unanimous. We can inform the committee of that.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to pass it over to Alexa now.
Good evening, everyone. Going to be talking about the Black Sea Bass February fishery. So this fishery has run for 4 years, 2018 through 2021. It's a special season. We are allowed to request from NOAA Fisheries. So this is just a summary of some information. 2018, the number of permits, anyone who wanted to fish for black sea bass needed a permit. In 2019, that changed to only the captain or operator of the vessel. That's why you see the decrease in number of permits. It has been increasingly popular, but as I think it was Mr. Bransom said, people who go to sign up for their copia permit see, oh, what's this? I'll sign up for this one too.
Mouse clickers.
So reported trips, been about 130. We do have trips sampled by our MRIP staff. They go collect lengths and weights, which we use to calculate how many fish it is we took, the poundage, rather than using some estimated standardized poundage, we can collect sizes that people have been taking in the February fishery to convert from reported number of fish to reported pounds, which in 2021 was about 15,000 pounds. And due to limitations placed on us by NOAA Fisheries, this fishery has to be landings neutral. Anything we take in February, we have to account for from the regular season. Usually we've taken off a couple days from the season, or a couple weeks. And our reporting rate has been fairly high. 2021, it was 82%. So as some of you will remember from earlier this year, from 2019 through 2021, the total coastwide recreational harvest exceeded the amount allowed, the coastwide recreational harvest limit. So we had to make some reductions. So the states in the regions changed their management measures to reduce harvest by 20.7%. In the southern region, that means our current regulations are a bag limit of 15 fish, a size limit of 13 inches, and a season from May 15th through December 11th. In June 2022, ASMFC, the Mid-Atlantic Council, passed the Harvest Control Rule, which says that when changing measures each year, we take into account not just how many fish were harvested with respect to the recreational harvest limit, we also take into account stock status, which black sea bass, last I checked, are considered very high stock status. So we're not yet sure how the Harvest Control Rule will affect 2023 measures. That's something we should see closer to November, December being when they'll vote on specifications for 2023. Something else new this year is 2022 was the first time black sea bass used conservation equivalency, where some coastwide federal measures were replaced by region-specific measures. That's why we have generally a lower size limit, higher bag limit than some of the northern states, and then federal measures. So, but one problem with that was the way conservation equivalency works. NOAA makes a federal rule that says we will observe the state's conservation equivalent measures, which we have approved. That federal rule goes into effect in April or May in preparation for the May 15th start to the season. That, of course, is after our February season. So the way that rule first came out, we would have to follow federal measures for the February season, which would have been 5 fish at 14 inches. Virginia went back and said, that's not acceptable. I don't know if our charter fishermen would leave the dock for 5 fish at 14 inches. So we said, what can we do to have this mirror state regulations? And so they did put language in so that any states with an approved February fishery would be allowed to follow their conservation equivalent measures rather than federal measures. So while we don't know if 2023 measures will be the same as 2022 in Virginia, the February measures should be what the current measures are for Virginia. So if Virginia is interested in a February recreational season, which is my question to you, VMRC will write a memo requesting a season from ASMFC, laying out our plan for the fishery. ASMFC will vote in December with their recreational specifications whether to grant us a February season. At our January commission meeting, the commission will vote whether to open the season. And then if there is a season in April, the commission will adjust the regular season measures to account for that February harvest, like I mentioned earlier. The recreational season requirements should be the same as they've been in previous years. A permit will be required for the captain or operator of the vessel. Any vessel leaving the dock must call operations before or immediately after the start of their trip. And that way we can coordinate that biological sampling for lengths and weights with our MRIP staff. And then anyone with the permit must report by March 15th. So we know this is a pretty popular program with our anglers, with our charter industry. It's well thought of outside of Virginia as well. ASMFC has actually said any further applications for a February fishery should follow the Virginia model. North Carolina had a February season for 2 or 3 years, and they used their MRIP data, which didn't exactly work out. Some of their sampling didn't turn out well. So, faced with having to start a permit, they said they were just going to get out of the February fishery. So 2021, Virginia was the only state with a February season. And as far as I'm aware, I don't know of any state planning to apply for it again in 2023. So what I'm looking for today is the committee interested in having a February season?
Okay, committee members, is there anybody in favor of a February fishery?
Yeah, I think if we can discuss it a little bit, Jeff.
Yeah, can I say something when you're ready?
There's quite a few people. All right, Skip, you start with you.
I'm on the fence with this now. As much as I liked it in the past, I'm going to get crucified for saying this, but we had a great year this year, and I think a lot of it was due to the lower water temperatures. And I'm not sure that not having February maybe helped that, but I know it is very important for a lot of the charter guys and everything. So with that being said, I think we should probably have it, absolutely have all the way we did it before the same, but I'm not 100% sure that the head boats will participate in it yet. We'll probably get a permit just in case, but I don't know that we'll fish.
Okay.
Just because it's so weather driven, and it was kind of nice not having to worry about it last year. But I know, there were so many others that kicked and screamed about it, so,
Yeah.
I would have to vote for having it, but I don't know that we would participate.
Yeah, I think 2021, there was almost no harvest until
The
the last
Yeah.
2
And that was
weekends, and then all of a sudden,
Yep.
everyone went out.
It's a crapshoot every year, so you can have a pretty February, you can have a crummy February, and it's 50 miles out. You're not talking about the inshore wrecks at all.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I think the February sea bass season has been good for a couple of reasons. One, it helps out charter guys in the winter months, but it is weather dependent. And the other thing it does is it gives us wave one data for the APES system that has been historically not available for any of the fisheries haven't been open in wave one, which is January and February of the year. And this has been valuable into providing that data for fishery management. I would favor the February season, but the reporting, you say must report by March 15th. If I recall, and I'll tell you it's been great because I make the call before I leave. I call the Marine Operations Center when I'm a few miles out, and about a third of my trips I've been met at the dock at all hours of the night by a Marine police officer who's checked, taken a sample, a couple times take a sample, another time they say, you're good, but they come aboard and they take a look. I thought you had to report on your way back in with your estimated time of arrival at your landing and what you've caught. I thought there was a requirement to do that. Of course, it's been now it'll be 2 years since I've participated in it, but I thought there was a requirement, a note to notify, like you say, before you, on the day of the trip, but I also thought there was a call on the way back, which would give them an indication, a report basically, that says, I'm coming back in with a 6-man limit of X amount of fish. There it is, there's your report, so.
So to address 2 of your things, this data actually doesn't get used for MRIP.
Yeah, but you have APES surveys going on, though.
We don't, actually.
Not in January or February.
The staff go out and they sample, but that data comes to us only. So APIS for black sea bass should only take, well, if there was any in March, it would, but the season's not open.
Yeah.
But for wave one, if you look at APIS, it'll say 0, but we report our numbers to ASMFC so they're able to use that, because hopefully our landings should be lower during the rest of the year because we had that February fishery.
Yeah, I'd like to
And
say
not-
that I think the MRIP APES system should be sampling in the February season. If they're not, that's something that they probably should be doing, because they'll catch those recreational harvests and get that expert observation and the measurement and weight of all the fish for a certain, recreational. I think it's something that, I thought they were sampling wave 1 for the sea bass.
Now, the only sampling in wave 1 is, I believe, North Carolina South, but even because of site frequencies reported, North Carolina's data, they estimated essentially several reports got blown up into a much larger harvest than is reasonable. So that was something the technical committee and monitoring committee took into account when we were looking at their data. And it is not in the regulation that you have to report on your way in.
Okay.
I know operations and our MRIP staff will sometimes ask people to call in. So, we've got Jeff Allen who says, okay, we've got 2 boats coming into Rudy. Let us know what time you'll be in so we can have someone meet the boat.
Yeah,
And people do call in their numbers, which is very helpful, especially because since there is this dual reporting, we have some people who report by calling to ops, and they won't report to the Saltwater Journal or to us, and vice versa. So part of my job after the season closes is to go through and match up who reported where. And if we have reports to ops, I can usually call those folks and say, just a reminder, I need your paper reports so we actually see those landings in our system.
I know when you make your report on the day of the trip, you tell the Marine Operations Center that who you are, where you are, how many you got, and what time, where you're leaving, and what time you're coming back. Now, nobody can guess.
Yeah.
If the fishing's good, you're going to miss the window. But I'm not sure if you have to call on the way back. I generally do tell them, hey, I'm 30 minutes out or whatever, and I've been met, and it's fine. I know the APES system, they can't target to meet a vessel at the boat ramp to say, hey, they got somebody coming in. They have to be selecting that 4-hour block at a, but we kind of know where the recreational guys leave in February and where they come back, and, but I was expecting that APES would be sampling that data and gathering that expert observation, so.
Yeah, because it's, APIS is a sample that gets expanded, versus our system is more of a census. We should know everyone who goes out and everything they bring back. So it gives our APIS staff something to do in February. There was one year we had some extra funding, so we were actually able to put some of our staff onto head boats where they were able to get discards, which was very useful. But it's not something that's part of standard APIS sampling. Like you said, APIS, we can't have them target. We know people are going out of here.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any committee members on this end of the table who wanted to speak? And I have to apologize, I forgot to go to the audience on the previous issues. Anybody care to speak on this issue or anything we've covered to date? Guess not. Sir?
Excuse me, come back on that again?
Would you like to comment on this issue or any issues we've covered up to now?
No, if we have it on red drum and gray trade, I'd like to talk on it.
All right, thank you.
All right, next, is there anything else on black sea bass?
We don't need to make a decision now, do we?
I mean, we're gonna be submitting a memo to ASMFC. I'm probably gonna start working on that so we can get it in for their December vote. And then the decision will be made in January. I believe our commission meeting will be January 24th, which only gives a week before the season would open. But that's just the way the timing works out. We don't want the commission, we don't want BMRC to approve it and then have the council decide they don't want us to have it. So that was why the council used to vote on it in January, sometimes the afternoon of our commission meeting where we were approving it. So we went to them this year and said, can we have that vote earlier? So just the way timing works out, the commission will be voting on it, should be voting on it in January.
Okay, would everyone in favor of,
I was going to say, I'll move that we recommend to the commission a February black sea bass season.
seconded? Okay. All in favor, raise the right hand, please.
You can't see my right hand, this is Tom Bella, but I vote yes.
Tom did too.
Powers, I vote yes also.
Okay.
All opposed, the same, please? None. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up will be the spiny dogfish trip limit increase.
Hello, everybody. Okay, these are just a few informative slides about an issue that we actually brought to the commission already at the September commission meeting. So in the fall of 2021, the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council had begun discussions on a trip limit increase at the request of the northern spiny dogfish processors. And then in April of 2022, National Marine Fisheries Service published their final rule, which increased the spiny dogfish trip limit in federal waters from 6,000 pounds to 7,500 pounds. In August of 2022, staff received and was approached by industry members. We received a letter, a memo, from industry members, harvesters, and buyers asking for the VMRC to consider raising our state waters trip limit to mirror the federal trip limit at 7,500 pounds. The benefits of this increase, an increase in the trip limit means less trips necessary to achieve the quota. This trip limit increase has absolutely nothing to do with the quota. The quota remains the same regardless whether we harvest 6,000 pounds a trip or 7,500. Less trips means decreased fuel costs for the harvesters and decreased shipping costs for the buyers. Majority of our spiny dogfish are shipped up north to be processed. So at our commission meeting in September, the commission voted unanimously to approve staff recommendation to increase the state waters trip limit to 7,500 pounds, and this took effect on October 1. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Could you raise it any more? Can we get rid of more of these things?
Okay.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
And that leaves what?
Other business. I'd say other business and then take public comment. So if the committee has any other business that they'd like to bring before the committee, now would be the time, and then we can take public comment.
All right, that's everything on the agenda. Do we have other business to come before the Skip?
I have had several charter guys approach me about lowering the sheep's head limit from 4 to 2. Evidently, the sheep's head are everywhere. They're not hard to catch anymore, and they're just hand over fist. And I know Ken Neal has also gotten some interest in this also. We talked about it at the council meeting, but I don't know if that's what, I guess we need to see if, how many recreational guys are interested in lowering it.
Is that something we would have to have a public hearing on?
I would say, I've talked to Skip and Dr. Neal about this. I think what we would do is if the FMAC wants us to look into it, we can go ahead and see what the catch has been and provide an informational meeting to FMAC and go from there. And you know, if we want to, you know, you're making a recommendation of lowering it from something, so we can go ahead and look at that. That would probably be the first step.
Any members of the committee interested?
When you're looking at that, is it possible that you can get the raw MRIP data and provide a distribution of catch per person trips? The actual intercept data, so that you can figure out whether, oh, look, yes, there are lots of people who catch them and catch 4, or, oh, you know, very few people actually keep 4 and those kind of numbers.
I believe we can do that, Tom. I believe we can look at how many people, you know, how many trips are catching 4.
All right.
Or,
Yeah, and I'm talking about real intercept data, not something expanded on. You know, of the intercepts that had these fish, this is how many each one had distribution levels. That's the kind of number I would be looking for.
I believe we have.
Data should be publicly available.
Say again?
The raw data should be.
Yeah, the raw data should, it is available. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. I will.
Yeah, I would, I remember the speckled trout thing we did years ago, went from 10-2 to 5-1, and what that brought back memories. So I'd like to see the data, you know, that your staff can put together to provide it on a possible option of 4-2. But I'd also like to look at another option that keeps it at 4 and restricts it to 1/22. And do something like that, and because I don't think a lot of people are catching the over 22, and they can keep, you know, 21, 22, but and keep it the way it is, and put a restriction of 1 fish over 22 inches, rather than reduce it.
Okay. Don't give us too many options, gentlemen, because we'll be bogged
Anybody
down.
else have any new business? Oh, I'm sorry.
Gray trout.
Oh, another something, okay.
Well, there's confusion amongst the watermen. It's mandated by the ASMFC, correct?
Yes,
So it's coastwide.
yes.
It's not just Virginia, so New
Yes.
Jersey, all the
Yes.
states are only allowed 100 per day per
Yes.
vessel, period.
Yes.
Because we hear stories about New Jersey's boats are landing this and that, and I keep telling everybody, I just want to make sure I'm correct on that.
It's coastwide.
Right, coastwide. If there's any way we can push them, I know, like I said, we do have a gray trout problem with boats having to quit roundhead fishing and other fishing because of the amount of gray trout that we're seeing now. So I just wanted to bring that to,
Yeah, we'd probably have to wait till the next assessment comes around.
I assume so, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
bring that to everyone's attention.
Okay,
Part of the compliance reports we submit is actually how many trips are exactly 100 pounds, how many trips are over 100 pounds, as a way to see how vessels are being curtailed by the limit, and that is coastwide.
And people report over 100 pounds? I mean, it's only 100 pound.
It was a low percentage, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's, you know, a couple trips a year.
Yeah, it wasn't high, it was low.
I haven't looked at the other states. Some of it may be reporting errors, some of it may be, you know, people who just don't realize. I'm not sure exactly.
Because if I've got a boat that's 110, I'll take it to the 100 and discard the other 10. I don't know if that's the proper way to do it, but, so we do have discards that way from the trout, so.
John Bello has his hand raised on
all right, John, go ahead.
I guess
I would have my hand up, I just want to see whether before we recommend any action, it sounds like you're gonna do that.
All right. Is there any new business from the audience they would like us to address?
Sheepshead and weakfish, okay.
Yes, sir. Come up and tell us your name and who you
If
represent,
I can get up there.
please.
Okay, so sorry, I can't get up. The mic won't reach, so just speak loud.
Well, you're talking about gray trout. The last night I fished, I had to quit fishing because of gray trout. I probably had 100,000 pound in the net. It took me 8 hours to pick the loose ones out. Me and my crew. These gray trout have been coming back for the last 7 or 8 years. We've thrown high as 40 boxes over them, back overboard, when we're just culling through the speckles. But this year, this low pressure we had come and stayed here, that hurricane, kept the glass drop so far. Them fish, when they got up to move, they done something weird this year. The spot went right out of here. We sent the next blow behind them. We caught close to 30,000 pound of spot and about 2,000 pound of speckles in them. The very next blow, I set, And she was so full of gray trout that I couldn't get the net ashore. We had to turn the spot, the speckled trout, and everything loose in order to get the net back. And there is pictures of it, but I don't want to get anything started that we don't need to get started, because we need to have a quota for them. The gill net fishery, and I'm sure there's people in this room will testify to just what I'm saying. They've been throwing them back overboard now for 6 or 7 years, about thousands of pounds a day. And there's no sense in it. There's a lot of people that feed in this world. Matter of fact, I don't know if we've got a market for them anymore. We've waited so long.
Okay, would you give us your name and where you fish,
Yes,
please?
my name's Robert Hollowell.
Okay,
I've been Hall St. fishing for 60 years.
in the bay? In the Chesapeake Bay?
Yes, sir. I've been fishing at Lynn Haven, in between 2-pound nets there, Demetrius pound nets, for the last 50 years. And I fished at Ocean View for 12 years, before I even had the Hall St. license.
Yeah, we have a question.
What size are they, Robert? Like, are they mostly small, mediums?
What, the grays?
Yeah. No, the gray, yeah, the gray trout.
Gray trout, we had gray trout, 2 or 3 pound fish, sellable fish. But we had a lot of mediums. And there'll be big fish next year. And it's a shame to kill it fish. But the gill net fishery, see, wildland mouth fish is in 2.5-inch net. We had that law made, 400 foot or 2.5-inch bunt to land our fish on, you know, mainly your spot. But you cannot govern the mesh can't be much bigger, because then all your big fish will stick in it. So the problem is, we got too many illegal fish. The red drum, I had one night, we threw 10,000 pounds back overboard. I've been throwing them over now since 1993, and if I haven't thrown 3 million pounds back overboard by hand to save them for the sport fishing industry, I've done nothing. And I've got pictures of the red drum, 20, 30,000 pounds, plate big as this whole room, with the blue tail sticking out of the water. And we've tried to get a quota on them too, to help out. But anytime I throw 10,000 pounds back overboard, eatable fish at $2 a pound, that's a month's work.
Pat, can
And
you-
when I go on that beach, the 9th and 10th of September, none of the Hall of Fame fishermen have much over 20 days to fish, in and out of the weather. And you'll go back to that reporting on the speckled trout, you'll see they're all caught in that amount of days.
Yeah, Robert approached me about the issues he was having. You know, he was concerned about the red drum. The problem is we can't act fast enough. I mean, and it's also under ASMSC. It's a very old amendment. It hasn't been changed since 1992.
1993.
1993.
They stopped us from catching them and give us 3 per water, what's called.
But it's we'd have to we'd have to go through ASMFC to do that. I know a couple of years ago, North Carolina came before the ASMFC board and said we were catching a lot of red drum. You need to help us out here. And there was nothing they didn't do anything at the time. They were saying wait for the next stock assessment, and that stock assessment wasn't approved for management. So it's difficult. I mean, we talked about changes we're seeing. We're seeing more red drum than we've ever seen. We're seeing more spotted sea trout. We're seeing less striped bass. We're seeing changes in the bay. Alexa and I some of the staff attended this big blue crab workshop that we had here that talked about, what's going on in the bay, what's going on, why are things so different. And we're seeing a lot of changes. For whatever reasons, we're seeing a lot of changes, and it's difficult for us to keep up with it. It's like we can't, Skip sits on the council with me. It's like you can't act fast enough to do some of these things in these kind of circumstances. All we can try to do is, see what we can do for next year. And see if if there is any appetite at ASMFC to make some kind of a change. But, and when he approached me about it, it's just like, we're not gonna be able to act this fast. It's just, there's no way we're gonna be able to act. I think he called me late August, and you told me maybe it was late September, you called me and said, first cold spell we have, we're gonna start seeing red drum. And I was like, I don't know if we'll be able to do anything that quick. But
Can we start on whatever we have to do just to get started?
I go through a lot of ideas. I mean, it's, a large, if we had a better, if we had a lot more staff, we can have observer programs to actually verify a lot of these things are occurring and to what extent, because what Robert might be seeing may be totally different and something's happening elsewhere. So, but, we don't have the staff to do that. But, being able to verify it with things like that, we might be able to go to ASMFC. I mean, I can almost bet North Carolina is going to, if we're seeing the kind of red drum we're seeing, North Carolina is probably seeing a lot too, and there may be some, hey, we need to do something. But, we all know that our process is slow, but that process is even slower.
And just as a quick aside, so the red drum stock assessment is starting.
Yeah.
We do anticipate results from that by 2024, which does sound like a long time, but that's how the management process works. ASMFC isn't going to change the limitations they've put on red drum until they have a stock assessment that tells them that the species is doing as well as what we're visually seeing. So unfortunately, it does take some time, but there is something on the book, so we recognize that that's the place for us to bring these sorts of observations to, so that we're making sure that what gets into that assessment shows us hopefully what we're seeing out on the water too.
What about gray trout?
Don't know when they're next.
When is the next assessment? We'd have to check the schedule.
I'd have to check the schedule on that one. That species is considered severely depleted right now. So I would have to check on the stock assessment schedule for that one to be able to give you a better idea.
We'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
I can tell you, the last 2 years on the head boats, we've seen more and more and more. Matter of fact, the main captain that runs it, he's said, it's a shame we can't keep anymore because they've been seeing more and more gray trout in the summertime.
Yeah, I mean that's good. It means that the restrictions that we put in place have worked, because that stock was, absolutely wiped out. So I'm glad to hear that there's more out on the water, and hopefully, that shows up again in some of the models.
We had a 2019 weak fish stock assessment update that said weak fish are still depleted.
That's 19, so it's probably one coming.
Five.
Every 5 years they'll do
24.
24, they'll be starting a new one.
I would say, Skip, we catch them all summer, the gray trout and roundhead up the bay. The boats that fish out of Davis's Wharf up there, they're all the time now. We're seeing them also.
And those,
How do they go about telling the stock assessment, figure the stock assessment out on these fish? And how can you get an accurate report if you can't catch any of them to give an accurate report?
So usually with things like that, they're using fisheries independent data. So remember I was talking about the two different types of data that go into an assessment. Fisheries independent data is going to be from something like the NEMAP survey, if you've heard about that, which goes out and catches fish separate from what the fishery is doing to give us a better idea of what the abundance looks like.
Well, you're talking about Jimmy Rule going out and catching.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Robert, we do have, the problem right now is we don't have any fisheries independent surveys that target spotted sea trout and red drum effectively in this state.
Not in this state.
Not in this state, but the south.
Here's a big problem with that. The drum they're gonna catch are all 40, 50-pound drum in the ocean. All these small eatable drum, from 18 to 26 inches, gonna be in the reed somewhere. So there's no way Jimmy Rule can catch them and give you the stock assessment.
Right, I'm just using that as an example. There are other surveys.
Same with the speckled trout.
Yep.
Now, the speckled trout, you saw on that thing just a minute ago, how many was caught in a quick amount of time. They've just started out of the bay.
Right.
And if we get a bad freeze, you're gonna see the biggest speckled trout kill you've ever seen in your life, because they stay up all summer in the reeds. Even the gill netters can't catch them.
Yeah.
They
Well,
get up in the region, that's where they stay.
yeah, speckled trout we have a bit more control over. So Pat's point is with,
The Guinea marshes, this summer alone was solid full of speckled trout. Everybody that was standing on the bank catching speckled trout. Last winter, all winter long. Lynn Haven, all winter long. Rudy Inlet, all winter long. Behind the Ford plant, all winter long, everywhere, because the water temperatures never dropped enough to run them fish out of here.
right.
But my God, I pray we don't have a freeze, because it's gonna kill, it was, 5 or 6 years ago, we had a freeze in the
Yeah.
Pamlico Sound. They froze from the bridge that goes over the, Coinjock Bridge, going to Nags Head. They froze from there to Morehead City. Thousands and hundreds of thousands of them froze dead, floating up. So we want to get a quota raised on the speckles. I don't see it where it'll hurt a thing. And the gray trout. That way we can try to get a market back. If we don't get something back to gray trout to help us out. The red drum, I don't know what we're gonna do about them.
Yeah.
And what I'm afraid of, some of the boys you ain't gotta worry about the Holstein, these few Holstein fishermen we got. I don't think we got but 3 or 4 to catch any amount of the red drummer. Some of them this summer alone have had to turn their whole catches loose.
Yeah.
They pull their fish to a pocket. They try to get the fish up to the pocket, but there's so many red drumming in that, they can't get the red drum and the fish in the pocket, so they have to turn the whole catch loose. So they're basically out of business.
Yeah.
That's what I had to do the other night. I fish off the beach, and I have to handle these fish in the surf. And it ain't a pretty job if it's a little bit rough.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's not, I don't know if it's 10 Holstein fishermen between Gloucester and Lynn Haven. It used to be 10 Holsteins between Ocean View and Little Creek Jetty. There's none now.
Right.
There used to be 30 gillnet boats in Lynn Haven. I mean, Little Creek, there's none. There maybe be one in Lynn Haven. I don't know if there's one or not, a half of one. So there's no pressure on fish of any kind in Chesapeake Bay. None. And what I'm afraid is gonna happen if we don't do something about it, whether the federal government's involved in it or not, you're gonna see a kill of fish here like you've never seen in your life. Cold weather's gonna kill them.
Sir.
And I've got a, excuse this, I've got a buddy of mine that lives on Sylvia Beach. He's a builder, he's got a summer cottage there, he called me. He lives right in Bayview behind me. I said, what in the world is going on with the menhaden industry? I said, well, for one thing, there's been more menhaden in Chesapeake Bay than there's been in the history of Chesapeake Bay. He said, how do you know that? I said, last winter, the research boat out of Rude Inlet, tagging in rock, was marking menhaden on the bottom, 30 feet deep, from 8 miles outside the tower, all the way to Chincoteague. And I told the head of our Watermen's Association up there, you're gonna see more menhaden come into Bay this year than it ever has been in the history of the Bay. Good, they had a fish kill. My friend says, well, what can we do about it? I says, pray at all them people up there jumping up and down, wanting to stop the menhaden industry, pray that they don't stop them. Because if they do stop them, it ain't gonna be many more years, them menhaden will come in the Bay, use all the oxygen up in the Bay, and you think they got a mess now? They'll have a mess that they can't clean up in 5 years. It's already been done in New Jersey, if you look up the history.
I do.
It took bulldozers to get them out of the inlets in months. They died.
Well, for the record, I was hoping we can get out of an FMAC meeting, we're not talking about menhaden.
Hey, and I'm gonna tell you, I was fishing in the Atlantic Ocean sea bass fishing before it was Rudy Inlet. Before any head boats was in Rudy Inlet. I'm 81 years old, and the damn fish is just about ready to kill me. There's so many of them. I can't walk. We had to bend down on our knees and pull every fish out of the net the other night to try to get them back overboard alive. You don't want to kill the fish, but you can't sell them. What you gonna do?
Yep.
Something's wrong. This last administration we had in Richmond was sport fishing orientated. They didn't care nothing about commercial fishermen, because they want to put you out of Chesapeake Bay and make the Chesapeake Bay one big resort area. That's what it's headed down to. But if these 7 or 8 Holstein fishermen can do anything to hurt the stock of any fish is in Chesapeake Bay, they ought to shut the whole bay down to all fishing. And let them grow till they grow out of the water and wash up on the beach.
Robert, we'll talk more. We'll talk more about
It's a
this.
sad thing to see like this.
Okay,
We'll
Pat,
talk,
can
we'll talk
you
more about this, because,
Something's gotta be done about it.
make recommendations to the committee in the future?
Yeah, we can talk more with
We can
Robert
talk more,
and get
and
some.
like I said, we can't do anything immediately.
I can
but
show you pictures,
We may be able to work it. some-
50, 60,000 pound of red drum with his tail sticking out of the water, his blue tail flopping.
Yeah.
And I've turned them loose for years and years and years and got nothing out of it.
Do we have a meeting date for the next meeting?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if
I'll
they-
have a motion to adjourn.
Ron, if you want to speak?
I just have questions, really.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared to speak, but I'm happy to.
I mean, Ron Larson's here from,
Yeah,
He announced it
Thank you,
before.
man.
Yeah, didn't
No
he?
problem,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
just,
Yeah.
looking at the wind
You'll
energy
definitely
projects,
take
if
all
anybody
that
has any
down.
questions about
I'll
it.
just pop my head in real
Yeah.
quick. So Jeff, Chairman Jeff introduced me before. I'm Ron Larson. I'm the fisheries liaison for Dominion Energy's Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Program. Just happened to be in the area today, knew you guys were having a meeting. I figured I'd stop by and see if anybody had any questions about how the work was progressing and what the plans were for the CVAL program. Just a quick update is we are surveying right now. The survey activity that's going on right now is a unexploded ordnance survey. I think everybody that fishes around here knows about the military presence. So what they're doing right now is doing a different type of survey than we've done before, which was a geological and geotechnical survey. Now we're just really surveying the area for potential for unexploded ordnance, and that started in July. We started close to shore. We wanted to kind of get done out of get done out of Rudy, get done out of close to shore, but get out past the CB buoy before the shrimp fishery started, before the gill netting started for dogfish. So we want to get out of there beforehand, and we're also trying to get out of the northwest corner of the lease area before the conch season starts up. So we're doing the best we can to try and plan our survey activities around the known fisheries that are going on right now. So that's kind of where we are with the survey activities right now. We are working with VIMS and the VMRC and planning some fisheries monitoring studies that will go on pre-construction and post-construction, and that's primarily going to be for black sea bass and conch, and we're also looking at the surf clam fishery, which has started up again a little bit farther offshore, much farther offshore from the lease area. So that's kind of what we're doing right now in kind of the near term. But like I said, I wasn't really prepared to speak, but happy to take any questions that you might have.
Where can we go for more detail?
You can go to you can call me, contact me for more detail. I could point you to the website, but it's probably not going to have as much detail as it would be if we just had a conversation.
Thank you. Any questions? Guess not. We have a motion to adjourn in a second.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Hey, I've got one question for him. I'd
Yes,
like to
sir.
say off the record.
Off the record?
Yes, sir. In 1960,
Committee's adjourned.
we were fishing on the north end of the reef off Virginia Beach.
Jeff, thank you. Blue catfish.
By goes it's a big ship with a star on the boat there. A Texaco ship. When he gets outside of us 10 or 12 miles there, it's all he's going to
Visit our website at www.